Welcome to the next episode of Crack the Code, episode 7. Talking about embarking on an organizational transformation with DevOps can be a massive undertaking. So successful transformation involves more than just getting your dev and ops teams to work together. We will discuss it further today. It involves the entire organization with a mindset focused on CI, testing out new ideas, empowering customers, and ultimately encouraging success through failure. So today I have Niranjan Paranjape, Senior VP of in engineering platform of GO-JEK, and he will share with us a couple of insights around Gojek's DevOps transformation journey, the challenges and the continuous learnings throughout the process, and the exact steps they will take through in this organization and go through. Niranjan, I'll get you to introduce yourself today and give us a bit of an overview of your DevOps transformation journey. Thanks for being here.
Oh, pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me here, Adrian. So, as you mentioned, my name is Niranjan. I've been in industry for almost 15 years. I started my career with Infosys and then quickly moved on to ThoughtWorks. And that's where I learned the ropes of software engineering as well as a lot of DevOps and DevOps practices. Post ThoughtWorks, I started my own consulting company out of Bangalore, and we were serving various startups from seed funded to Series A, Series B across India, Indonesia, and Bali. That's how we got introduced to Gojek, and I started working with them almost 5 years back, which resulted into Gojek acquiring my company, and I became part of Gojek. So after joining Gojek, I have played different roles here, leading the technology for entire Gojek or part of it, while simultaneously building the delivery organization in Bangalore and participating in overall strategy of technology strategy for Gojek. Today, I'm working as SVP engineering on engineering platform. This is a team which is focused on increasing efficiency of developers in Gojek. Right, so actually building the tool chains, the deployment pipelines, and so on and so forth.
Nice. Thanks for the introduction. So it's interesting. So you started with learning a different bunch of frameworks, and you were part of the entire DevOps history, and you were able to see different things. And now, obviously, you are at Gojek. Could you share with us if there was something different to what you learned before in your career? Obviously, it's spanning over 15 years, but is there something new you learned at Gojek you did not know before?
Gojek has been extremely interesting journey because just to give you a little context on what Gojek is and where it comes from. So the company itself was started almost 8 years back, but it actually became an online platform 5 years back. So for a good part of the existence in early years, it was just a call center where you can place an order. Jan 2015 is when company launched its first product, like digital product, right? And the product actually was three-pronged. It was ride-hailing, right, like Uber, but on bikes. You could do grocery shopping, and you could do some logistics, right? So it actually launched as 3 products. And in Jan 2015, when it launched, in the first month of operation, it completed close to 15,000 completed orders, right? That's where the journey began. We came in April. By that time, it had gone from 3 products to 4 products. We had launched food, right? And then first, almost 18 months of Gojek is what I would call the product phase of Gojek's life cycle, where Gojek continuously tried to explore new business verticals, trying to see what customers really want. And we went from 4 products to 22 products in a matter of 18 months.
Nice.
Which is quite counterintuitive if you think about it, because the general philosophy is, if you're running a startup, do one thing and do one thing right. Whereas Indonesia offered a unique opportunity for Gojek to actually venture into multiple business verticals to see what sticks, right?
And so, just a quick one on that one. How did you hand? This is an interesting one. Within this short period of time, you had to scale. You talked about 4 products, and then you moved out to close to 20. But how did you scale technology and the people in that rapid way? How did you do it?
Yes. So simultaneously, while we were scaling from 4 products to 22, we also went from 40 engineers to 300 engineers. Okay, and there's always, you say, right, like if you have lots of scale and that's the reason your systems are failing, that's a good problem to have. We lived through that problem. Yeah, we lived through that good problem for good 24 months, right? Like we were actually seeing 10% week-on-week growth. So at end of 24 months journey, we are grown from 15,000 monthly orders to close to we're grown by almost 1000x from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
That's massive.
Yeah. So it was a crazy journey, right? Like if I look at the primary factors which were governing the overall systems, infrastructure, etc., at that time was ability to provide infrastructure faster to the teams was extremely crucial while maintaining stability and uptime.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the amount of growth which was already there in the market, which we were able to capture, right? Spending a little more on infrastructure was an acceptable choice, because if I essentially go to Nadeem and say that, hey, you know what, we are spending too much on this Elasticsearch and I need to fine tune it, and hence I need to essentially pull out a team of 3 people. It'll be like, oh, those 3 people can work on this product, which will get me so much more customer value. Why don't we just throw money at the problem for now and we'll get to cost optimization later, right? So in that early product phase of Gojek.
So that was your first approach to really try to handle the market need first and work out through optimization processes. So that was obviously one of your first challenges you must have had to tackle. How did you deal with bringing in so much talent, jumping to 300 engineers, I believe you said? How did you deal with the technology aspect of it? You spoke a little bit about the infrastructure, but then there is every talent and every resource hire has different experiences. They wouldn't know everything. How did you manage that? How did you organize yourself?
So from get-go, what we decided in Gojek was sticking to one language and one platform is not going to make sense, because we need to essentially get people from different backgrounds to the company. At the same time, we need to solve problems of different nature. So we said that, okay, there are these, instead of standardizing on one language, we standardize on 4 languages. So we had Ruby on Rails for dynamic languages running on JRuby, but dynamic programming, faster iteration time, and you can actually get something out of the door really, really quickly. Then we had part of the stack which was built on Java, which gives more comfort of static programming, right? And also for GoPay from regulatory perspective, it was good to be on Java, right? Then we had Golang, which is really useful for small services, and if you want to do multi-threaded operations, like concurrent operations, Golang essentially yields itself really well to that. And we had Clojure for the kind of problems which require functional solutioning. So we had all these 4 languages. On the component side, we decided that we are going to essentially limit the types of components, right? So instead of actually going across 5 different databases, we said that, okay, let's build expertise in couple, right? So we have Postgres, we have Elasticsearch. Obviously, that has changed over a period of last 5 years, right? But at that time, focusing on that to essentially scale them out was meaningful, and what we went with.
I couldn't help it. I noticed your shirt. It says data nerd on it. Now you're talking about something what I find very close to scaling distributed databases. You spoke about Postgres and Elastic for your search capability, but it sounds like you do something exciting potentially in that space as well, where you potentially seeing how you can, because you must be collecting a lot of data, being a real-time company, having multiple products. Could you share a little bit how you set yourself goals in that space, or potentially how you consider even shifting gears maybe into Kubernetes and cloud native platforms, and talk about cloud native and data, how you handle that.
Yeah. So we took a little different approach on distributed systems. So instead of essentially working on distributed databases, we said that we will essentially take that logic at the application layer. Right. So in early 2017, we moved to asynchronous messaging. We introduced Kafka as the central bus. Right. And then we essentially took the sharding and load distribution at Kafka level. Right. So we could essentially move towards more decoupled systems, which are based on evented architecture, instead of having one massive system with distributed database.
And are you then archiving the information after a couple of days into some sort of sync database or something like that?
So it actually depends on the type of the data and the problem which you want to solve, right? Obviously, there is a transactional data which we need to keep for, like we need to essentially archive it and keep it for history, right? So what we do is the transactional system, which actually receives the data, keeps that data for 14 days, right? Because even after I have completed the order, I might have, complaints about it, and there might be some mutation. So hence we keep that data in transactional system for 14 days. But the time the order is created, you also raise event on Kafka, right? Now that event is used in a couple of ways. It is consumed by workers to then take further action on that event. It's also consumed by our data sync, which pushes that data into BigQuery.
Right. Okay, so this is very interesting because you're talking about a lot of new cool technologies which are out there in the market. What was the ultimate goal you wanted to achieve? And with those new technologies, how were you able to? And you don't need to walk through all of those, but just to give the audience a bit of a idea. It's always the trickiest bit to create a metrics and measure your success and the performance, right? You can't keep on hiring more talent. You can't keep on expanding the infrastructure, like you said. So you have to somehow move into optimization. How were you able, if you could walk us through one example, for instance, to come up with the metrics and measure it? How were you able to do that?
So there are different kinds of metrics at play here, right? At the heart of it, whenever I look at product company, one of the key differentiators I see between a product company versus technical company is I always keep the metric of per capita revenue as goal for an engineering team. Right? Obviously, there are factors which are outside the control of product delivery, which impact this metric. But as we are in the product market, achieving non-linear growth, and by non-linear, I mean decoupled from the headcount growth, is something you can do. Right? We are essentially building technology to achieve that scale in a non-linear manner. So the per capita revenue or per capita transactions should always go right and up.
Okay. So it seems like you're looking from a business perspective at it.
Yes. Right. So that is on the headcount versus how what is the business impact you are creating. Right. Other than that, you also want to look at metrics which are more inward facing, which are things around developer productivity, right? So, and overall development. On that, there are three key metrics which I like to track. One is a lead time, right? Whenever an idea is formed, from there to it going to production, how much time it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. We hear that a lot as well in my industry.
Yeah. Then what is the throughput? How many such ideas are being pushed to production on a weekly basis? Right. And third is defect rate. Right. How many
Which one's the one?
Defect rate.
Which one's the third one?
Defect rate. How many bugs you are introducing? Yeah. So your lead time should continuously shrink, throughput should increase, and defect rate should be down. So building robust systems which allow you to achieve all three of these right? And obviously, it's like they in turn result into different metrics that you can track.
And did you come up with those metrics fairly early in the journey at GO-JEK, a couple of years ago, or is this a experience you had and you tried to then? Because it sounds like the first 2 years at GO-JEK was very heavily the demand was there, the market took up your products, and you had to deal with the scaling out in various components and divisions. Or is this an outcome as experience you had when it comes to those metrics?
It is combination of both. So a lot of this is not something which I have come up with, right? This is written in books for like software industry has been reading those books for last decades, right? So nothing new there. What was interesting from experience in Gojek perspective is while all these three metrics matter, depending on which life cycle stage your company is in, which metric you want to focus on might change. Right? Like, for example, in early days of Gojek, when taking product to market was a really core focus to test out what sticks, what does not, right? Lead time and throughput were the primary metric, and defect rate we could live without even if there is little higher defect rate, right? But as the company has matured, keeping the defect rate low has become a critical factor because we need to earn customers' trust, right? And our customers don't look at us anymore as some startup who is trying to figure things out, but they essentially depend on us for a lot of critical things. And specifically, when you look at our driver and merchant ecosystem, they depend on us for livelihood, right?
Yes.
So now defect rate has suddenly become top of the mind more than it was when Gojek started, right? So
and so. In this kind of mindset, just as out of curiosity, another thing which comes in my mind is dealing with the rapid speed and building code and improving your product and collaborating and all these nice things in DevOps. How do you find time to consider new technologies and make potentially architectural decisions? Could mean a migration, or it could mean extra effort, which may not in the short term relate to benefits. How do you deal with, as an example, Kubernetes? Are you guys using Kubernetes? Are you considering as an example?
Yep. So that's a really interesting question, right? Again, so this is something we started almost a year and a half back. So till year and a half back, we had a small system infrastructure team, which is to provide most of the systems requirements. Okay, but the actual SRE was baked into individual product teams, right? And at that time, systems team was really small, like 10 people, which was serving close to 500, right? But yeah, so because a lot of work of actual maintenance and management was offloaded to individual product teams, right? Now that ethos still continues in Gojek, but what we have done is we have significantly increased the capacity of the systems team and converted that into engineering platform team, because the amount of investment now you need to do when you want to migrate from one stack to other or introduce new stack is much more, given the scale and breadth of overall infrastructure. Like we have close to 10,000 cores on GCP.
Oh, wow. Also, you actually, as part of this journey, you also decided to work in the cloud space as well. So it's not just owning your infrastructure potentially, but also move into the cloud as well.
We are in cloud. We are on GCP and AWS.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So we are actually in process of moving. So GoPay has already moved from VMs to Kubernetes, and
nice.
Yeah, the Gojek mobility infrastructure is in the process of moving from VMs to Kubernetes, right? And while doing that, we also discovered that there is a lot of technical debt we have accumulated. So, so first of all, even building inventory of all the services, right? We have those microservices and code bases. So build the service registry, build the team registry, set up authentication and authorization. We started with Datadog as a monitoring tool, but as you scale, Datadog becomes prohibitively expensive at this scale. So essentially, looking at CNCF, we finalized on Cortex. So we have a small team which is working on Cortex and Prometheus, taking that to production, and then wiring it up with all the team dashboards and alerting and monitoring. Then we have formed an API gateway.
You're using a lot of really cool tech from what it sounds. In terms of how do you manage to, and it's probably one of my last interesting questions here, how do you manage the cultural shift with the engineers, having so many engineers? How do you manage to convince them that this is something great, this could scale better for us, it eliminates our restrictions with technologies? You spoke about Datadog. How do you manage the cultural aspect of the people?
Sure. So there are two parts of this equation, right? One is all these different things aren't happening in one team, right? While engineering platform team is responsible for spearheading a lot of these changes, but I don't consider them to be their domain, like restricted to them, right? Like if transport team or consumer platform team wants to try out new technology or new system, they're free to do so. So we don't have restrictions from that perspective. What the expectations we have is, if you're essentially going to try, say, Neo4j for one of your requirements, currently engineering platform team doesn't have capacity to build expertise in that. So you will have to manage it yourself. As long as you're okay with that, go ahead and do it, right? Rather, once you do that, I would expect you to then propagate that knowledge to rest of the org in terms of what interesting things you found there and how they can benefit.
Do you have, this is a great thing actually, that you give the engineers the ability to go and explore new technologies and potentially frameworks as well with the technologies. Do you have like a forum, a technical forum set up, or do you have like a working group as a center of excellence where they actually have the ability to share their findings to the wider GO-JEK organization?
Yeah, so we do follow RFCs and ADRs, right? So if you're essentially proposing a significant architectural change, you have to first file an ADR describing what is the change you want to do, why you want to do that change, and what is the expected outcome, coupled with who is going to lead that change, what are the key metrics you're going to track, right? And then that goes to, like if the change is significant, like introducing a new language or new technology, that goes to a slightly wider audience for review to make sure that everyone is on board, not in terms of go, no go on the decision itself, but primarily understanding why this decision is made and does that add up. Like, are you introducing Elixir because it's just school language, or is it because you have certain problem which you want to solve, which Elixir lends itself to solving? Like,
absolutely.
Making sure that we are not driven by fads is something this team ensures, right? But once this is a go from their side, then that individual team can go ahead and implement it and figure things out. Yeah, I was saying that this is
and as part of it, just a quick one to follow up on your process. If an engineer comes up with an idea, presents it, and it's a good idea, follows the process of collaborating in the organization, is there like a process in place where other engineers of other divisions can say, hey, this is a great idea, we would like to implement this?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things which we did in recent past, right? It's not more on the process and tool side rather than technology side, is we're essentially evaluating incident management systems, right? We had one incident management system in place, but the head of engineering of consumer platforms, he said that he wants something better. And we went and talked to Blameless, got that integrated in our workflow for his team, right? And now entire Gojek is shifting on the platform because we actually found it really meaningful and useful. So then we brought in additional capacity to manage the program, to drive adoption across the organization.
It's pretty good. So from what I'm hearing, just to summarize in today's session, it's a lot of aspiration there to ensure that the right talent is in there and the right talent gets the right tools. But you also seem to open for your organization the ability to come up with better ideas, which is quite interesting. DevOps engineers always have that naturally, that they want to explore new tech, but they generally stick to tech and they don't look at frameworks and processes and bring it into the organization. That's probably the trickiest bit I found from my experience. But it sounds like you're doing really cool stuff at GO-JEK. So I appreciate everything you shared today, and I hope the audience can see that I wasn't even aware that GO-JEK does use so many cool new technologies. And it seems like you're also looking at the CNCF landscape. Sounds like you're looking at a lot of tech which is around Kubernetes. So no, I appreciate you sharing your insights and you're sharing what you're doing. What's next for GO-JEK to grow? And maybe you want to share something just in the last minute or so with the audience to learn about the future of GO-JEK. Is there anything cool you want to share?
So if I look at what next for GO-JEK, and specifically on the DevOps part of the equation, right? I honestly think that DevOps is a culture, and it is not one set practices which you need to follow to be there. It's an ever-evolving process. And looking at the organization in terms of how it is mutating, and then constantly looking at what you have done in the past, figuring out what worked and what didn't work, and continuously iterating on that process is critical for keeping everything up to date, right? And the amount of changes which are happening in outside world, right? Like literally in last 5 years, technology has gone leaps and bounds, right? Whether it is Kubernetes, Prometheus, Influx, Kong, Envoy, like just the number of really interesting open source tool chains which are coming up, which makes scale easy. It's fascinating, right? And if you're hitting scaling problems, looking at the community, looking at what people are doing, and then figuring out how you can adopt those instead of being stuck in one place. It's far better.
Yeah, that's an absolute cool goal to have. Absolutely. I'm totally with you on that. Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day and allowing our audience to hear more about what you're doing in your role at GO-JEK, Niranjan. That brings me to the end of this episode, 7, actually. So I appreciate that you shared your journey and what you had to go through, and hopefully our audience can actually pick something from that, and maybe they can see how your experience with frameworks helped you in your job here and making GO-JEK successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. It was really nice chatting with you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.